with. Introduce yourself.
Energy Master Allah, aka the Emma. Oh, how come it ain't pointing at you when you were doing the introduction? You just seem like a disembodied voice. Yeah, I know I'm on.
They know I'm here. And tell them we're about to talk about biogeometry and its connection. Go ahead, you can explain that with the spectrum of autism.
Autism. All right, well.
You got a fork.
Just one in the bed. Well, where should I start? Okay, so I would say everything I'm aware of now is a culmination of a few things, and I, for the purposes of this conversation, I'll use when I had COVID as a starting point. And so, what? So you know, when I first got sick, you were encouraging me to like paint while I was in quarantine and stuff. What motivated you to suggest that?
The only thing I know is that whenever I was going through anything, whether it was depression, a bump in the road, or any kind of illness, it always made me feel better to paint, and I was able to express myself in various ways. We have a little one over here.
Yeah.
His daughter.
I'm not going anywhere.
Helen.
Yeah, you were saying?
It always made me feel better whenever I painted. And when I would paint or do any kind of art pieces, I would pour whatever that dark energy or negative energy into my painting. It would turn into something beautiful.
All right, so here's what happened when I started painting while I had COVID. So not long before that, I had been playing around a little bit with automatic drawing because it's a good way to access the subconscious, because most of the time we access the conscious part of the brain, the logical left side of the brain, to draw, and it's you want something to look like something, but what automatic drawing does is it forces you to just kind of go along with what you feel, and then you can kind of look at it, and then using your left brain from there, you can start to kind of identify shapes in it, kind of like how when you look at the clouds, you say, oh, that looks like a fire truck, or that looks like a bunny rabbit. And of course you say to yourself,
Introduce the baby.
come here, Kelly. Come here, mama. What she got? It looks like she got a pen of some sort, like a...
That might be why she's so happy over there.
It's dangerous. I know it looks like a little version of the mallet, but it's not a mallet. So,
He is so patient with her. What we're about to talk about is biogeometry and its association with possible healing or assisting children and adults that are on the autism spectrum.
All right, so anyway, like I was saying, yeah, so just like you would look at a cloud.
Daughter.
She better, are you in the camera? If I move this way,
Well,
the
if you
camera.
saw Kelly,
Yeah, that's Khalil back there. My daughter, my oldest child. She has a little brother, half her age, who maybe we'll have to get him tested once he gets closer to 18 months, because he it's some behaviors, but he seems like he's further along in his development than she was around that age too. So it's like, so it could be.
well, I'm not sure if they know that she's on the spectrum, autism spectrum. But she's highly intelligent.
You can barely tell for the most part, aside from him being mostly non-verbal, but that's after close to a year. Yeah. You want some of this chicken? You have chicken in the bag.
Yeah, put her piece over there.
You gotta break her stuff up. She won't eat. She particular about stuff. She won't eat it unless it's torn. I was keeping it in the bag because it was hot. Kelly, you want to eat some of this? Kalia. She's preoccupied. All right. Bunny rabbit. I ain't gonna bring a bunny rabbit again. Looking at the cloud, see bunny rabbit. All right, so you may sit there and think to yourself, well, I know that the cloud isn't itself a bunny rabbit, but that's both right and wrong, because by virtue of the fact that you saw it as a bunny rabbit, shows that there's something common geometrically about that form that reminded you of a bunny rabbit. And so the purpose of all shape is to basically resonate your thought with a certain concept. And so regardless of whether that comes from, you know, a physically manifested bunny rabbit that was born that way and it was that way before you got to it, or if it's you looking at something that reminds you of a bunny rabbit, in either case, it's only a rabbit inside your head. Like that name, that designation, rabbit, is in your head. Now, that's not to say that creature isn't sitting over there doing what it's doing, but it didn't call itself rabbit, is what I'm saying. And so the whole concept of rabbit is attached to, concept exists beyond space-time. Beyond space and time, that's something that happens in the realm that we access when we think. And so this is why you can then turn around and then draw key shapes. Like I experimented one time with what's the minimum amount of information that you would have to draw on a piece of paper to remind them of Bugs Bunny. There is no possible way to draw Bugs Bunny, no matter how simple, Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse, without drawing their ears. In the case of Mickey Mouse, you can draw only the ears of the silhouette and then people recognize it instantly as Mickey. Or you could draw the rest of the silhouette without the ears and they wouldn't recognize it without you telling them in most cases. Same thing with Bugs Bunny. And so there's something essential. And so once you actually start learning what these forms, what these figures mean, you'll start kind of seeing a pattern of where they occur in nature and things of that nature, things like that. You start seeing it in like ancient civilizations and you wonder why they chose to build something on this particular spot or build it in this particular way. It's because they had, the word understanding is a loaded word because it wasn't even, at least according to Dr. Ibrahim Kareem.
No, it's fine. Who's Dr. Ibrahim?
I'm gonna get into it. Ibrahim Kareem is I don't know how, he's over 80 if he's still living, but he's an older gentleman who's of Egyptian descent, who studied. Well, he's the one that coined the term biogeometry after recognizing that, like, his background is in like architecture, art, design, and then he got more heavily into sciences and things of that nature. So he basically recognized that there were these, there was some correlation between where these locations where ancient civilizations were choosing to build, their architecture, and then other civilizations would come in and build in the same spot. And it's because they understood energy in a energetic phenomenon in a way such that they knew how these energies would resonate in certain places and how they resonated with certain materials and how they amplified certain effects, because it's like certain things that we sense kind of subtly, sometimes, but then they're amplified in certain places. And so, so he's been doing work with that for the past 50 years. And but before even becoming aware of him, like I was saying, so I was doing my automated drawing. By the time I get sick, when I'm in the room, so something that happens when you're in that state, especially when you have fevers and things like that, you often hear about people having quote unquote fever dreams or even hallucinations. And something I just learned within the past week or so is that something that's common to a lot of people who say they've had like alien abduction type experiences is that depending on what type of alien it was, because essentially they kind of break it down into being so of the stellar beings, which they prefer to be called. You have ones that are here because they are purely logic, and then they have no emotional body, and then they want to study you, and to you, you're like an insect. And then you got the others who are of a higher dimensional resonance, who want to teach you how to teach the human race how to ascend, how to get where we're supposed to go. And so that's what they say. I'm not saying confirming or denying the existence of aliens, but I'm just saying that's what like the folks who study that sort of thing, or who have had these experiences say. But anyway, but one thing that's common among them is that they will have these fever dreams, and in the case of those who had contact with something that was trying to teach them, they would receive what a lot of people call the downloads. Like they would have these visions where they were taught, certain things. And so I thought back to a time when it was one of the, and I remember telling you about this. It was one of the times I came home. I think when you were staying, might have been on 4th Avenue, and then I was asleep on the couch, and then I said I woke. I had a dream where it was like I was being taught the Taoism. I didn't know hardly anything about Taoism, but then I had this dream where it was like it would have like one thing, like let's say like it was the word hot, and then it would match it with cold, and then it would strike out cold and it say not hot, and then it'll move. And so basically I learned that extremes don't just.
Oh, this is the motion camera, and
Extremes don't. You moving more than I am.
Move your hand. Just move it over there. It should. Well, anyway.
See, it's fixed on you. You should be able to tap on the screen and then it'll fix on the person.
Yeah, just tap it.
No, nobody in particular. You just have to tap on the person on the. Anyway, so you have these extremes, and then they balance each other. They don't just balance each other out, but they're essentially the same thing, because there's no such thing as cold. It's just more hot or less hot.
It's just like positive and negative, not exactly good or bad.
There's no such thing as negative. Negative is just a way for us to describe something that has a far less or no charge. So like with the, see, you sitting close to it, it just turned to you. Yeah, so.
No, all I was doing was laughing.
Yeah, I know. So I want to look at you. You
Okay, let me kind of break it down in layman terms. It's just like
I was
if
getting
we see a table,
No, because I was about to give the example of a magnet.
Okay, well, using the magnet.
Most people think you have a positive. I know how to explain stuff because I taught children, and I have an autistic child. So you have a positive pole, which is the charged side of the magnet. They call the other side negative, but there is no force of negativity coming from that end. It's just that it doesn't have any charge at all. So the top part is pulling on the bottom part. Mm-hmm. So and then we call that positive and negative, and that's pretty much how it works throughout our nature. All right, because we're always smack dab in the middle. So there's always something bigger relative to us, and there's always something smaller relative to us. No matter what size you are, there will always be, like for instance, when you get small enough, let's say you an ant. There are some objects that are so big compared to you that they don't even occur in your range of vision. Like it's so all encompassing that it isn't even a consideration. So likewise, there's some things so big in the universe that we don't see it or interact with it. You can't really see the planets besides little specks without you using a telescope or some stuff like that. So
this is how that's tied. Biogeometry is tied to autism, or the healing of autism. Can you explain that?
No, I'm getting there. Because
but it might take.
No, but here's the problem with. All right, so let's address that. Mm-hmm. What you just said. I can easily come in here and say, well, what's one? Love is the key to all things. And hold on, listen. I could walk in here and say that, and definitively know.
That just not the sentence out when you say it all.
Hold on, listen. No. It's true. Now, but the problem is, you're not hearing that sentence from my understanding. You're hearing it from what your understanding of the word love, all, and key are. Right? So, and then as a teacher, you have to be responsible for the fact that a word that you use means something different to a person who hasn't educated himself on the thing that you're saying. Okay. So I assure you, anything that I'm saying right now is prerequisite to you understanding what I'm about to say about why a bunch of triangles and squares have anything to do with autism.
Okay, can you ease into it so my audience can understand?
If you let me finish, we'll get there.
I'm not trying to argue with you.
You started. Just let me finish talking.
But I'm not arguing. I don't argue.
You still going? Let me finish talking. All right. So there's polarity.
Did you just disc me on air?
No, that's over.
I'm just kidding.
If it wasn't so important to get to the people, I'd be done. But it is important. All right. So like I said, so most of the things that you perceive, you've been taught or understood entirely wrong because you're fixed on a duality type of understanding of things. Until you understand that those two things occur differently so that a thing can interact with itself, how could you possibly understand resonating between two dimensions? There's a difference between the type of dual communication that we have where it seems like two separate people transmitting information to each other by having a conversation. I say a thing, you hear. You say a thing, I hear. However, with resonance, that's a word that means, and you assume a lot about your audience. I'm pretty sure if they watch you, they're pretty intelligent people.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, exactly. So the worst thing you can do as a teacher is assume your kids, the students are dumb. But
I've never said that.
I didn't say that. I never said that you did. I'm just. I didn't say that you said it. I'm just saying, as people who are intelligent who will go forth and teach this, remember that this isn't something to instruct you. This is something to let them know.
Absolutely.
As you go forth and you teach others, the worst thing you can do is assume that speak to.
And the worst thing you can do
hold on.
Speak something that they do not understand, because if you're speaking and they do not understand, that's not
Mommy, I'm breaking it down.
Okay.
If you're having trouble understanding, ask questions.
I'm trying to ask
If you I don't expect you to understand why why the wolf is blowing on a brick house until I've explained that he was blowing down straw houses. You don't tell the end of the story before you tell the beginning of the story.
Okay.
So if you listen to the end of the story, you say, "Oh, okay, I see why you said all that other stuff you said." Okay. Anyways, and then you have to understand too. I'm not speaking from in here. I'm accessing. So if you interrupt me, a lot of times you
downloading.
Yeah. So you're interrupting my download, and then I have to start the download over again.
And I know that better than anyone, right?
Yeah. So you should understand what I'm feeling as a result. All right. Clear. All right. So once again, as I was explaining, resonance means when two things, like let's say you got a musical instrument and both of you are playing the same, two people are playing the same note on two instruments. What'll happen is those two noises will combine to each other and amplify the noise, so it sounds like one bigger noise. If I'm playing a particular noise and somebody else is playing another noise that doesn't harmonize with it, it's going to just sound like noise and scramble and sound bad. All right, that's what we call dissonance. So you got resonance when they come together, vibrate together, feel like one thing. Dissonance is when two things that are unlike, they messing each other up. Sounds like static noise, whatever else. All right. So as I was saying before that, there's a difference between me sending a message to you, you receiving it, sending another message to me back and forth like that, versus resonance, which is something that happens where we don't even have to be in the same room. You've often heard of people, let's say like if something's going on with one of their children, they'll call them up, like they'll feel something's wrong because those feelings resonate with both ends. And then two family members could do the same thing. So a sibling call, mom will call, everybody suddenly starts calling you when something's happening with you because you're all resonating on a particular frequency that allows you to feel it as if it's happening over here. When it happens, it doesn't feel like it's happening over there. It feels like it's happening to you, and then the other person is brought to mind. This is the core principle of biogeometry. Because if you are stuck on this idea of, because in this physical realm you're in two different locations, you're missing the point of how all things are connected. They don't have to be physically touching or interrelated in that particular way because they're connected in another space. Correct. All right. So, y'all, this particular community is particularly fond of like Egyptology and things like this. And so, if you're going to study, if you're going to look at any ancient civilization, you have to look at those teachings within the context of where human development was during that time period, where what language was like at the time. Just you can't assess how things were created and what they mean based on your present time understanding. You have to understand it the way that they understood it. And one of the cool things that kind of confirmed some things I've always suspected that Dr. Kareem was talking about was that during that time period, that was before we had what he refers to as the Great Shift, where nowadays humans were primarily in that left side of our brain and mostly cut off to the right. People access the right in varying degrees, but compared to where it was then, it's an entirely different experience. Early on in Earthman's and then man, that's the general word for the species. That doesn't have anything to do with gender or whatever like it does today. It's just a general word for the species. Earthman initially had a relationship with nature very similar to what animals had, in the sense that it was an entirely right brain interacting with, instead of just sensual information, it was more, there was a feeling, a harmony. It didn't need naming, it didn't need explaining. You didn't even have to have a verbal communication between this person and that person, because just like if there's a threat off in the distance, every wolf in the pack perks their ears up or whatever. Everybody's sensitive, so they don't have to discuss with each other what we're gonna do. They all know you either gonna attack or you're gonna run. Like it ain't a conversation that they have to have. And so humans were in sync with nature in that particular way. Eventually, as the left brain began to develop, they had an experience such that the things, the sensations that they were getting in the form of those right brain vibrations, whether they were picking up on like the Earth's magnetism, whether they were picking up on temperature change, whether just that type of stuff that we only kind of pick up subconsciously now. We don't even pay attention to some of the things that we pick up from nature now. But when they would, what do you want? You trying to make me eat it?
She got a
That's bread.
in her hand.
That's bread. You want some of this? You want some of my bread? Is that what you telling me?
She got a Sharpie in her hand.
I got a color pencil. A white one at that. She can't even be able to do much damage with that. Unless you can color on something black. Yeah, I'll put my bread back in my bread. But anyway, so those senses, what the left brain started to do was allow them to assign names to what they were experiencing, and even the word is personify. So they're able to personify these things, which means be able, like if I had a set of sensations I associate with the sun, like the sun beams, it makes me feel a certain way. I turn that into a person in my head. So I have a conversation with the sun, hey, Mr. Sun, or whatever. Like they interact with that as if it's a person. They have a relationship with the sun. If the sun burns them, oh, the sun is angry with me right now. Like so they start to personify it in that way. But we do some form of that now. But then when they did it, they actually saw the way that they personified it is how they saw it. Like they literally saw a sun person, or whatever, and because they were using the part of the brain that dreams, or whatever. So in our dreams, the people and things that appear in your dreams are typically symbolizing some emotion, something that you've sensed in your waking life. So it's like, so it may not even be, if a particular person shows up in your dream, it may not be about that specific person so much as what they represent for you. So if there's a person that represents love and nurturing and stuff like that in your life, it's a possibility that that person is showing up because you're either present to that somewhere in your waking life, or you're lacking it in your waking life. Like you're not receiving the love that you want. So that person is showing up in your dream to communicate. It's your brain communicating with you, your spirit communicating with you. You need more of this in your life. Not necessarily that person, but whatever that aspect is.
That's what I say, because that shit on me.
No, he represents some specific probably like whatever role he played in that relationship. That's what he represents. But it's
spiritually, they say the person has been thinking about you for some reason or other.
See, it's the same. It goes both ways. If that person been thinking about you, they may think that it's because of you, the physical you, but then there's some aspect of you that they're lacking in their life, and that's why you came to mind. And so like I was saying, they interacted with reality entirely on that basis, right? And so the stories they would tell, the different myths and whatever else, whatever forces they were feeling around them, that's exactly how those things appear to them. So it's like, so their vision was highly informed by the pineal gland, which it has much of the same structure as the two eyes up front, but then it operates in darkness, and it secretes fluids, various neurotransmitters, which are like I guess you could think of those as like kind of chemicals that your body releases in order to translate like a electric thought message into an actual physical something material that your body can use. So like for instance, when you're happy, you may produce more of like dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical that your brain creates when you, in a few situations, when you exercise, it produces it. When you eat chocolate, when you have sex, like that thing that makes you addicted to something and feels good.
She's trying to sit up in line.
I know she. Oh, I guess I'm. Oh, she gonna steal my fry. You had fries, greedy.
Okay.
But anyway, so you have these chemicals, but then, mind you, that feeling started off as a thought, and then your brain turned it into an electrical signal. So then the electrical signal said, okay, I'm going to translate that into a chemical that you feel, and it has a certain effect on your body. So your thoughts do have an effect on your body. Those same chemicals actually build structures on your DNA that can, whatever your DNA is telling your body to do, those structures can hijack that program and then tell your body to do something different. So if you program your body to to feel good in certain situations, so on and so forth, your DNA is going to reinforce that. Whenever you're around other people that have those same structures, you're going to have this resonance that I was talking about before, where it's just easier for you and that person to amplify that feeling of joy. The flip side is also true. If your thoughts have been consumed with sadness, depression, illness, things of that nature, structures, and these structures are made of carbon and hydrogen, if you want to look this up. They build these structures on the DNA that reinforce sadness. So every time that a thought comes through your head, every time like other activities you do, you're gonna naturally be attracted to the aspects of that thing that make you sad. Right? So you have physical structures that have to be cleared out before you can even hope to really, really change your thought pattern. And then you're going to resonate with other people who have those same sad, depressed patterns. And it's going to amplify and make more people sad. Right? And so the Egyptians, when this would happen, they understood it to the point that they knew, okay, these things, these emotions, the way that I'm interacting with these thoughts, they're forming specific shapes. They knew that these things form particular shapes. Like if you look at different types of crystals, for instance, they form geometric shapes. Like you have some cube type shapes, you got some pyramid looking shapes that they form, and so on and so forth. Look at this camera hall right here. She is not camera shy by any means. You gonna wave at the camera? You see Callie in the camera? Wave at yourself. Anyway. Come back this way, camera. A little robot trying to look for her. We just got done watching the movie Megan with the little AI body. I ain't gonna give away nothing from it, but yeah, same type of idea. But anyways, and so they started to recognize that if you focus on a particular shape, that thought forms a particular structure on your DNA that reinforces you being able to do something or recall something again just by seeing that shape. So like if, let's say I focus on the image of a triangle while I'm doing a complicated dance step. If I every time I do this dance step, I always think triangle. In my head, I see a picture of a triangle, I visualize it. I do this dance step, visualize triangle. This acts kind of like a storage device on a computer, like a flash drive. So even if you consciously forget that dance step, if you see a triangle down the line, because you beat that image into your head so deeply, you seeing that triangle is going to allow you to remember that dance step.
I just had a revelation with understanding of that. I've worked with various patients over the years for 20 years, and I just now understand what you're saying, because we had some people with addictions such as opiate addictions, and I know the opiate receptors on the brain will cause kind of like a false memory. And I used to could not understand why people on crack could just not just stop, or people who were addicted to opiates, how come they could not just stop? And then I remember studying these opiate receptors. Is that kind of that same thing?
Yeah, so
Like a recall?
yeah, so you basically, mind you, when you think, an electrical signal is sent along a certain path, like you have these cells called neurons that connect and they form different structures. And so whenever you think, it follows that same pattern, that same structure. Whenever electricity is running this way, it has a magnetic field that's coming out this way around it. And as we know, magnetism has an effect on things around it. It pulls and pushes whatever else. And so if you know a little, like a lot of today's kids wouldn't remember, but cassette tapes, VHS tapes, basically instead of MP3s, everything was recorded on magnetic tape, where it's like the sound would move around little microscopic crystals on the tape using magnets, and then that's how it would record information. That's how the cassette would remember. Goodness, Ken, what you here? You want to cry? It would record it in that way by moving around the crystals, and then whatever. Hey, girl, stop messing with my food. You either gonna eat it or not. You gonna feed it to grandma?
Okay, thank you.
So you figured out how to use a fork today. Right now, like, she just taught herself how to use fork, yo, in a single day. All right, good job, Kelly. I'm about to close this. Good job. All right, so we're gonna save something for later, so you can show mine later on. All right. So anyway, so it follows those same pathways, and so if something is hijacking or is becoming the source of those pathways, it's basically recording something different. It's recording information in a different way onto your brain, and so for them, what they're seeing during that time is real for them. Like, they have a legitimate memory of whatever it was that they were experiencing. And then if their body was in a state where they're accessing their right side, their dream side of it, instead of them interacting with space-time as we do when we're awake, they're basically interacting with something that is constructed of emotion. So imagine. That's
what the showmen do in the high priestess.
And that's absolutely what they do.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
So like
So it's two entirely different types of reality. If light passes through this space time, it interacts with particles and bends in space time such that things look a certain way to us when we're awake. So imagine that you don't have particles. You don't have electromagnetic information like we have here with light. Imagine that instead of that, it's all emotions, emotion, thought, stuff like that. So the light is moving relative to your emotions. So that's why your anger can take the form of a specific person or monster in your nightmare, in your dream. So the light is following that emotion, and so when you're going through that high, that state or whatever, your reality is being projected to you based on the chemicals in your body, both the ones that you put in there that aren't supposed to be there, as well as the ones that are supposed to be there. And so the neurotransmitters, instead of your natural ones attaching to your DNA and whatever other receptors you have, you have this other one. So all drugs, so this basically goes for all pharmaceuticals. All pharmaceuticals are based on a naturally occurring compound in nature. You cannot make an effective drug unless its structure imitates something that's found in nature.
Correct.
The problem is, now I thought for the longest time that it worked differently because the structure may have been off or something like that, but case in point, it will not work unless you arrange those specific atoms, molecules in the same way that it occurs in nature.
Mm-hmm.
The real problem for them comes in the form of, if it's naturally occurring, there's no way for you to sell it, there's no way for you to get a patent for it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't own their drug. So what they do is they have to add something that's not part of that original structure to it in order to make it original.
Mm-hmm.
99 times out of 100, that thing that they add to it is toxic to you. Not even, it's not even so much that they intentionally are trying to poison you. It's just the fact that it's just like the equivalent of me knowing I got a square shaped hole and I got a cube shaped block, and I need to put a cube shaped block through this square hole, but for whatever reason I add a little piece of corner.
Mm-hmm.
So I add a little something else to that cube.
Yeah.
It's not gonna fit as snugly into that space. I could try to force it in there, but that's gonna cause damage over time.
Mm-hmm.
What they do is your body's natural response to that extra little something, that little toxicity, they give you what's called an AOI inhibitor. AOIs are... Kyle, what are you doing? You hold her, please. Kicking stuff over, girl. Oh, you ready to go to sleep? That's what's wrong with you, but we gotta go in a minute. Anyway, so they give you an AOI inhibitor. AOIs are something that your body uses to detect toxicity in the body and get it out of you. The AOI inhibitor is in there so that your body will keep whatever drug they gave you in you long enough for it to do what it needs to do. So it basically tricks your body into accepting this thing that's toxic to it. It's okay in small amounts because you also have stuff in your body that protects you. But you keep doing the same bad thing to your body over time, it's going to lower its resistance to you. And that's why people keep on having to increase the dosages and stuff like that, because those inhibitors are no longer working. Mm-hmm. All right? And so eventually the body becomes unable to get rid of that toxicity. So you can look at that as a bad pattern, which is like playing a bad note in the orchestra. Nose, mouth, chin, nose, eyes, eyes. All right, now I'm gonna eat you. All right, I'm talking, baby. All right, so do it on grandma. What's grandma's nose?
Where's my nose?
What's grandma's nose?
Nose.
Do peekaboo with her real quick.
Nose.
Do peekaboo.
Peekaboo.
There we go. So it's like playing a bad note in an orchestra. If the person's playing the wrong note in a song long enough, it's almost like it becomes part of the orchestra. Like people are used to that note being played in that particular song. And then the second you take it out, they can't quite tell why, but it feels like something's off. Like it feels like something's missing. And so your body will compensate for that. And if something has been following a bad energy pathway for long enough to where your body's gotten used to it, if you try to remove the thing that was causing it, it grows back. And that's what happens with cancer. So cancer, the physical aspect of cancer only manifests as a result of the shape that the energy has been, the path that the energy has been following for certain. So that shape, every shape has some kind of specific effect when energy follows that direction. So if it follows the shape of a triangle, it has a certain effect. If it follows the shape of a spiral, it has a certain effect depending on whether it's going clockwise or counterclockwise. And then if you want to figure out what each of these effects are, just look at certain things in nature. Like look at like whirlpool. Yeah, look, I'm getting it. Look at whirlpools in water. You look at the flight patterns of birds. Why do birds fly one direction versus another? Mm-hmm. All right, so we've established that following particular pathways of energy cause certain effects on the way you perceive reality. Certain things that you take, certain things you expose to, especially things that have an electric or magnetic effect, like your Wi-Fi, your devices, computers, power lines, all of this stuff has an impact on how you perceive reality. In the case of children with autism, people in general with autism, those electrical pathways are following a different shape, if you will. So it's like, so they're perceiving reality in an entirely different way than most people around. And then there's any number of reasons why that becomes the case. However, if you're aware of the correct path that these structures need to follow in order for them to be able to have certain capacities, then they'll be able to access whatever source concept, whatever resonances they're not currently able to resonate with. And so in the case of them, I noticed, and this is on something I've noticed within the past few days to a week, I saw a direct correlation. Callie, stop. Because I noticed your mom trying to call somebody. Oh, that's spam. I'm gonna say I still got time. We gotta go on this.
She did. She's so smart. She closed my hands and pushed them.
Yeah. So, because we got to finish, Callie. All right. So, I noticed an uptick in the speed of how she started to develop, being able to do things that autistic children shouldn't be able to do. Around the time I started incorporating the golden ratio into my paintings, the certain sacred geometry into my paintings, things that I was learning, like you've seen them. Like there's a reason why the cross is shaped the way the cross is. Did you know? All right, so there's 3 crosses that are basically the same thing from different angles. The Christian cross is an ankh from the side. So if you turn an ankh to the side, all right. So with the ankh, you know, it has the loop and it has the tooth sticking out this way. When you look at the cross, it's got a straight line here, one going this way. If you were to turn that thing a quarter turn, you'll see that there's 4 arms going out front, back, left to right, and then a loop at the top. So if you turn that to the side, the way you only see the side of the loop, it looks like the Christian cross. If you turn it to the other face, you can't see the ones coming towards you and back to you, so you get what looks like an ankh. And then if you turn it that quarter turn, you get this, I forget what the Catholics call it, but it's like, it looks kind of like a hook, and then you can see all 4 of them. But that's all essentially the same thing, basically teaching you about these aspects.
No, mama.
Callie. All right. Anyway, so as it relates to autism, if you could figure out, I started to hang these up as I'm working on them, and so they're up in a room that Callie has her therapies in. So she's down in that room for a couple hours and exposed to it. When stop playing in that, she playing in that tea with her socks. Girl,
mop it up later.
No, but she got on her socks now. But anyway, so I noticed that Shamar, like, and I've seen him do this before. Like every time he would come downstairs, he'd just be staring at the paintings and watching them and things. And so early on, I had to be a little concerned that he might be developing toward the spectrum as well.
That's what
But-
Keyshawn used to do.
Yeah, but then I noticed that as what happens with the paintings, if you organize the colors in a certain way and you're including certain shapes, it causes the eye to interact with them in a very specific way. They follow specific pathways that develop pathways in the brain. Now, mind you, there's no knowledge in our universe that you haven't been exposed to, because every material that you're made out, that you're physically made out of, has been around since the beginning, right? And it's just been arranged in a different shape at this point. But the knowledge of all that time is within you, and so when those things are arranged in certain shapes, your mind is able to recall information from those shapes, the same way that we're talking about with the triangle and the dancer, right? And so what I'm suspecting is, because these shapes are tied to ancient healing and just different pathways that are embedded in our DNA, it awakens up a part of them that they aren't able to access with language, because that's whatever's happening on the left brain. But there's an innate sense that they have a pattern recognition. Like, that's why autistic children don't make eye contact with you, because they're using the corners of their eyes, and then the corners of the eyes work differently than the center of the eye, because that's what detects movement, pattern recognition. It has a connection to the pineal and the thalamus, and it even has a correlation with how we sense gravity, like how we know the ground's beneath our feet. But why is it in a dream you were laying on your back when you went to sleep, and then you standing on your feet in the dream, and it feels like the ground's at your feet? That's because that's the part of the brain that tells your brain which direction gravity's coming from. So it's like, that's what they're using more so than what's in the center. So it's like, so that's what made me suspect that they're interacting with the world more so with this side of the brain, which is more like how primitive humans were. And then as they're learning how to use their left brain more, or whatever, they're starting to get an effect more similar to how the Egyptians and other ancient cultures access information. So when they looked at those hieroglyphics, they drew the way they drew. It wasn't supposed to represent something. It literally, when they looked at it, they were transported into a specific way of viewing the world. Just like when you put on your VR goggles and you go to a particular app or whatever, that takes you into a particular 3D world. Like that's literally how they experience it. Whatever feeling they drew off of those pictographs or whatever, they saw that feeling as opposed to whatever material, physical thing that was drawn. And so that's what, when you start to see artwork change significantly toward what we call realism, where they were just depicting what they saw, quantifiably, like, oh, I see eyes, nose, and then they're this exact position, photorealism. And I actually had grandma ask, like, it was something I did with sketch, like I'll do like realistic sketches just so I can cut them out and then include them in something. You see my food over there? That's what it looks.
So.
Yeah, and there's sauce mixed too. Yeah, and so I'd include it in abstract stuff just to be able to show the difference between them, because nowadays, because of the technology we have a problem where we can't tell the difference between something real and fake. A computer most people aren't seeing your work in pass me the sauce next week. They're not seeing your work in person, they're seeing it online. So a lot of times, if it's realism, it could have just as easily been done by a computer. Likewise, our food, the different electrical signals we getting from things, we think that some of this stuff is healthy, we think that some of it's harmless, but it doesn't carry life for us.
So are you saying that an autistic child sees things more realistic than we?
It's not a fair assessment. There's nothing that isn't real. They would take a little bit of background to understand why that is. It's just a matter of, are you seeing it? Are you seeing your connection to unity, which is your unity between this world and the next, or are you just seeing it based on the rules of this point? So,
are you saying that they see it according to what side of the brain that they're using?
Yeah, they're probably, see, the right side is associated with their feminine aspect, and that's more indicative of the bigger picture, whereas the left is how we interact with this
like a
version of reality.
Okay.
Yeah, and so both sides.
That's how men think, and sometimes women think, or masculine and feminine.
Yeah, so we live in a very masculine society at this point because it's been set up such that all the masculine aspects of have become dominant ways of survival. Like, you have to know money and science, technology and stuff in order to make money in this country and be able to feed yourself. When in actuality, you also need to understand the arts, you need emotional understanding, you need, because those are the things that connect you with source. Like the parts that you can't explain are the things that give you life force. Everything else is just a death culture. Like, it's basically a corpse. Like, you starting out a corpse and it's just a matter of how long it's going to take for you to rot. Versus, are you a form that actually has life in it? So some of these statues and stuff, like of Egyptian gods or whatever, they actually incorporated those biogeometries in those statues such that they actually resonate with the organs, so they had healing properties. Yeah, so you can create and design buildings, artwork, and things such that they actually store life force and actually bring life to whatever room they're in. But if you're just arbitrarily just drawing stuff because it looks good or just making buildings, like every room that you look at in America for the most part is masculine. It has straight lines, corners, or whatever. Indians, like Native Americans, a lot of them would get sick when they got put in the buildings because their teepees were round. Yes. That's a feminine aspect that drew energy up from the earth or whatever. And so when you throw them in these square rooms or whatever, they weren't getting that feminine aspect, you know what I'm saying? But these are the considerations and the way technology and just the way our country runs right now. That's why we're having an increase in autism, because they're not able to connect to those higher energies that are necessary in order for them to balance out, stabilize, and stuff like that. And so
I noticed in some tribes over in Africa, they make some of their buildings there with round shapes, soft shapes, gnomes and domes.
Especially in Arabic, it's like see, the feminine aspect is round and the masculine aspect is square. So every a cube fits perfectly inside of a sphere, or whatever, such that all corners of it touch the sphere, right? And so the combination of those two aspects is how we get our complete reality. And so you need a balance of the two, and depending on what proportion of one is to the other, that determines what level of consciousness we're at any given time.
We need to continue this discussion. We'll do a part two. I'm getting a little bit sleepy here, and he has to get home to his wife. So thank you for joining Colored Roses and Thorns about biogeometry and its connection to autism. We will pick up on this at another time. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you so much.
Clear.